Never mind.
Go. Hold on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Never mind. Hold on. Yeah. Can you mute everybody?
That was me. It's a delay.
It's delayed, yeah.
7-second delay,
7 seconds.
something like that.
You're playing the YouTube in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That was
you
me.
are- you are-
Delay.
Oh,
7 seconds delay.
Look, I heard that.
Something like that. I think we're ready.
If you could buy the Powerball tickets and then give them to me, so I know 7 seconds later we're good. All right, we'll call the meeting to order. Call this November 15th policy meeting to order. I'll take attendance. As soon as it loads up, Dr. Russell.
Here.
Mr. Saylor, I am here. Mr. Keenan is coming in the parking lot. Ms. Evans Brockett. Ms. White.
Yes, here.
Mr. Sansamarsh. Mr. Clellan. Mr. Liggett. Mr. Larson. Mr. Cohen. Ms. Smith.
Here.
Mr. Moran. Not here.
No.
Mr. Weaver. Here. And Dr. Floyd. Excellent. All right, please join me in saying the pledge of allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll start with comments in the audience. We'll start with people in the room. Anyone, would you like to make a comment? No? Okay, anyone on Zoom wanting to make a comment? Raise your hand. Guess if that's a function. Nope, okay. We'll move on to 2.01 review cycle policies.
Okay. So Mrs. Smith, I'll turn it over to you for policies 140 and 140.1.
So 140 is charter schools. And this one, you'll notice I have recommended quite a few changes to this policy. It was last revised in 2008 and last reviewed in 2017. So in comparing to many other school district policies, as well as a lot of it was more administrative regulation type language in the policy. So I have suggested removing some of that and adding some other language, and then actually adding the administrative regulations, which would address a lot of what the red was taken out of that. There's not significant change to the content of what is in the policy, just again, many things that were more appropriate to be in an administrative regulation.
Any questions on that? No?
You want the next one?
Yeah.
So then 140.1 is extracurricular participation by charter and cyber school students. And I just recommended very minimal changes here, just to clarify a few things in terms of classes held during the school day, transportation, and under delegation of responsibility, just clean that up a little bit as well. Not too many changes though.
Any questions on that one? Okay. Gotta get this 6:15.
So does the board talk about migrant
Yep.
education?
142.
142, migrant education, we reviewed that, there was really no recommendations. I know I have 251 and 255, what I can share with you with regards to migrant, the homeless students and even education stability for children in foster care. We're monitored by the state, I believe it's every 3 years, we were monitored in March of 2021. So all three of those policies are often asked to be presented to the state. And if there's anything that they would recommend, it will often come up. And so those policies have been looked at from the state lens with no recommendations from that. But just sort of an aside. shared to also. for that monitoring.
Any questions on that one? If not, we'll move to, we'll just want to just go 251 and 255.
So again, no recommended changes at this point in time. Mass monitor, those policies are brought forward, they're reviewed in that monitoring cycle. And if there's anything they recommend, they would typically share that out with us and nothing. to recommend. And that's the process we follow.
Any questions on either of those two policies? Okay. Ms. Smith, you want to do 240?
Sure, 240, we had discussed, or we had intended to suggest recommendations at last month's meeting, and then upon my investigation, I really learned that most districts, it's treated very differently in each district, and there's not a PSBA recommended policy or template for 240. So I wanted some more time to bring forth something, and actually, I don't have a recommendation for you this evening, but I'm looking for a little bit of conversation on what does this group feel the purpose of this policy should be. It's currently titled Recognition Awards. And basically indicates that we can recognize outstanding achievement by individuals or teams who represent the district, and that we may have trophies and other materials presented at board meetings or ceremonies. Other districts have, it's very specific to outside organizations providing awards. Some are specific to contests occurring. Some are very specific to scholarships. Again, there's nothing recommended from PSBA. I'm not necessarily even sure that we need a policy, but I wanted to have some conversation here if the group felt, is there a need for a policy? And if so, what would we want it to, what its purpose would be? And then I could certainly bring back some recommended language at our next meeting. We do currently have a 240 called Recognition Awards. It is 2 sentences long.
And is this the reason why on the website there's that board recognition form, or no? Or does that play a different role?
Yeah, I'll let you answer that, Dr.
The board recognition form was actually just intended to be an opportunity for people to nominate individuals, either students, staff, community members, for board recognition when we do that during the business meeting each month. It was just a way to formalize the nominations or recommendations.
Does anyone recall when the last time someone filled that form out?
It used to happen pretty frequently, years ago, going back 20 years. It used to happen frequently. The last time I recall formally it happened was probably two years ago, pre-COVID. But we used to go pretty religiously.
Yeah, it
to
was.
get recognition. It's a way to give recognition.
I don't think so.
I
No.
I don't understand. Pretty obvious that.
I agree with that one. Last one. I don't think it doesn't add any power to the board. Strictly define anything. Really doesn't really do anything. Whether or not it's there as a policy, unless there was something great motivation to expand on this, I don't see it necessary at all. It's an empty policy.
Given how students would do it, you got rid of the policy that was about recognizing them for it.
I think it might be nice if it outlined maybe some of what would maybe go into the acknowledgement or our criteria for acknowledgement.
We could do that.
It just seemed really broad. Do we have another policy that covers?
I don't think so. I don't think so. We just have the form. So it's like an admin reg, the form would be. So we could consider that.
We were discussing last week, or last month, but the board has to approve.
That was the scholarships, that was 913. Yeah, we'll get to that one, yeah. Commercialism in schools. Yeah. Well, would the committee like us to bring back some of those criteria from the current board recognition form? And do you want to look at it again next month with those?
So the recognition form is candidates positively represent the district, reach a high level of success in competition, place 1 or 3 in their regional competition event or national competition, ties directly to mission statements, displays good citizenship, and achieved beyond the scope of regular academics. I mean, it's always good to recognize people. Maybe we should, what Ms. White's talking about is start to just add a little bit, maybe combine the two, and then every once in a while try to elicit people to fill the form out so we could recognize them.
We could do that.
Yeah, I was. It was put in place in '94, last reviewed 5 years ago, 17, let's fund it for another 5 years. Maybe just get rid of it, but then I agree with your point that if the public sees that there is a formal recognition, kind of a nice thing for them to see. And then to your point, Jason, if at some point, this becomes more actionable than somebody, taking advantage of it. If it's never being used that form and it's never been filled out in the last 5 years, then I like the form.
We could link the form here too.
Yeah.
You know, like an admin reg.
That's part of the issue that the form kind of holds is that there's no cross-reference. Now, I don't know that anybody knows
Right.
that. People have been busy, to Mr. Mark's point, for the last couple of years, not really worried about submitting for board recognition. I just, in other words, it fell out of practice, I think is probably what your point was, that before it was something that was pretty normal. The other thing is that this talks about high school award ceremonies and banquets. To me, this type of recognition should be district-wide for all levels. I don't know if expanding it in terms of who would be able to benefit it. It's so vague that I guess it's really open-ended. It can just be interpreted however, but it would be nice if there was some sort of a parameter of, is it biannual? Is it by semester, like marking period? Is it?
Monthly.
Yeah.
So what we can do, I appreciate all the points that have been raised, and I do appreciate you recognizing from a student perspective how this might be viewed, Mr. Clellan. How about if we work on putting the two together? Would that be okay? And then we can look at it as a policy and then actually have a link as we would for other admin regs so that individuals can see it. If they happen to be in policy, we can also advertise it more. We can communicate the opportunity more for board recognition opportunities from voices outside of administration.
You do, the policies have language that talks to your question, Mr. Saylor, of like language like the superintendent or designee will annually put word out or whatever. So you could find language to replicate in there to get the word in too.
Okay.
So we'll bring that back. Thank you.
Anything else on the review cycle?
So I'll just remind the committee, we are quite a bit ahead on the review cycle. We have a 6-year review cycle. So we're going back and we're pulling some of the oldest or those that have been sitting the longest since we've last reviewed them and trying to cluster them so that Mrs. Smith gets a few or Mr. Weaver would get a few, but we're trying to be organized in how they're presented to you so that they're from a similar section. So these were the ones that we pulled for this evening. We'll continue to do that.
Mr. Weaver? 913.
So last month, we brought forward 913 based upon the TNN that recognized some additional changes. I tried to merge the TNN recommended 913 with our existing 913, which was commercialism, in an effort to kind of try to streamline everything. That brought chaos. So Dr. Russell and I, at the request of the committee, we took it back and looked at it from a different perspective. And what we are recommending is bringing forward 913 in a clear format for non-school organizations, groups, and individuals as recommended through the PNN. And then redefining what that 913 exactly is, and then moving commercialism to 913.1. So just to be clear, we are not merging them, we are keeping them separate. Some of the recognitions for a recommended 913 under the non-school organizations, again through the PNN, includes defining the authority and recognizing that the board does want school community may benefit from the receiving the information. Dissemination is a very big word in the PNN vocabulary. And we are recommending the changes, small changes to that and defining that. As PNNs come out, they oftentimes have open boxes for us to check and to manipulate the policy as we like to see it be. So we wiped out under authority, not prohibiting or prohibiting any of this. We think it's somewhat good as long as we control that dissemination of these materials. So that's the first thing, we define the authority. The next item under definitions is that we clarified and added a sentence, these included in the green, but are not limited to booster clubs, home and school organizations, and the PD Education Foundation, to name a few, just to give a few examples there. Then continuing to go forward under non-school activities, we highlighted and added some additional verbiage unless approved by the superintendent or designee in that first paragraph there. And then moving on to fundraising, again, one of those open-ended questions that PNN has. You can see what our choices were and how we maneuvered through the actual fundraising, defining it for PV. Moving on to scholarships and awards, again, another open-ended question for us, and we chose the item starting with the building principal. And then included in that addresses the scholarship situation. And then moving on to the last piece of that, the travel services, foreign trips, and you can see where we included the information that was provided for. We eliminated it based upon our current practices. And so based upon that, move forward with 913 as changed for the so-called listed non-school organization from PNN.
And so I'm sorry. The only thing I want to add to that is we would recommend that the current 913, which is commercialism in schools, be shifted and numbered as 913.1, which is common in some other districts. So we're not recommending changes to that policy, but changing the number. I'm sorry, Mr. Cohen.
Just a curiosity question. Why 0.6 on that? Seems like a good liability.
Because in this case, they are school sponsored. The board approves them.
You have an example of a non-school activity that the board approves?
Right. Booster clubs, home and school organizations, and PD Education Foundation as examples.
Any other questions?
Is your question answered?
Not necessarily.
Okay, so non-school activities are typically approved by the building principals as they work closely with home and schools, or in the case of the high school with booster clubs.
That's not the board.
No,
Well, you said that it was a board approved. Right?
well, I referred, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I referred to this last statement that Mr. Cohen asked about refers to travel or foreign trips. So the board
Yeah.
does approve those, therefore
Sure.
they would be school sponsored,
Travel services. yeah.
just that example.
Yeah.
Just to be clear. Yeah, I'm sorry, Ms. White?
You were saying that the reason it was struck, but the board doesn't have to approve it because we're giving the authority to the building.
Up here,
Approve it.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And that would be my recommendation to continue. Yes.
Any other questions on 913? We want to open up 913.1 since it's the same. Well, it's just carried over.
No recommended changes, just the number from 913 to 913.1. Again, that it has been in our research, most surrounding school districts that have these policies are they're set up in succession in this way.
Any questions about any of that? No? Okay. Thank you. Local policy reviews, you want to just go into 122, Mr. Weaver?
Sure. So the only thing that we would like to highlight and to request that we are recommending is the waiver. We are recommending the waiver of the activity fee paragraph in 122. The reason being is that the activity fee has not been applied the past several years. We are in better economic shape than we were when the activity fee was first researched, developed, and put into policy and enacted. So our recommendation at this particular point in time is to remove the activity fee. What it does is it saves the school board from the annual, let's go through and see if we need to have an activity fee. Effectively removing this removes all of the activity fees moving forward, and they no longer have to review that on a yearly basis.
Can I ask a question? So if the school board decided they needed an activity fee, the first process would have to be through policy then?
That is the process that we did before.
So can we just go through a hypothetical? So 2 years from now, we find because of the economic situation, maybe something happened that caused us to potentially need an activity fee. The first process would be to, and that conversation normally happens when?
So I think we took almost a year to develop the activity, the concept of the activity fee. There was a town hall meeting in February of 2010, 2011.
Yeah.
It took us quite a while to enact that, to go through that process, and then to go through the policy committee and then approved it, and then it was enacted.
I think at the time, we were looking to other districts who were also implementing activity fees. Really, it was something new for us, and we were learning from other districts, moving through a very different financial situation as a district. And this was one step that we took to try and offset some
Well,
expenditures.
What we have found is that many school districts talked about it and not many followed through with the actual activity. Some of them have a technology fee, for instance, something different directly related to technology warranties or something like that. We never went that way. We just went with the student activity fee and then charged that. It has been challenged as being fair and equitable throughout the years.
I guess my question is more nuanced. Is it easier for the school board each year just to say we're not going to have an activity fee this year? Or is it, and that's a one-step process, but to actually have an activity fee, remove it from policy would be a multi-month step process to send it back to policy, have policy that enables the school board. Removing it means, well, we don't have a policy to actually have one where, the school board could just say, hey, we don't need an activity fee next year, we're good.
Correct. On any given year, it varies between 90,000 to 120,000. And there was an awful lot of effort. I know Mr. Stacy should probably speak to this from an office perspective. There was a lot of communication between the offices, central administration, to make sure that those fees were charged and collected. Oftentimes, collections were delinquent, and we had to follow up with those particular individual students. So there was a lot of time and effort put into that. For that revenue stream of $100,000, really, there was a lot of people on board with that. And again, there was always questions about the fair and equitableness, if that's such a word. Because if you have someone who plays in the band or the chess club versus sports, it was a universal kind of $100 fee. There was questions about middle schools because it was charged to 7th and 8th graders, as well as seniors. Some families got the benefit of that because they had multi-sport and multicultural people that participated in these things. They had, they played in the band, they played in the orchestra, they played in the choir, but they paid one fee versus somebody who did one activity that it was subject to and paid the whole $100. So that question had always existed.
We found ourselves in a series of
That's a good question. We've never been in that position. Certainly, it would be the prerogative of the administration and the school board to work together to make sure that the budget was met, whether it was a zero budget, negative budget, or whatever that budget number would be. It would certainly be subject to that consideration.
it didn't happen previously. Conditions.
Yeah, my question is more nuanced. Is it easier just to say the activity fee for the year is 0, but we have the policy, or get rid of the policy? Then if we need to implement a form of activity fee, we have to go back through the process of reorganizing the policy.
But it seems unlikely that.
Yeah. How long did we have the activity? How long?
I disagree. The activity still exists and I think having going back to the last way that I revenue is not a fair at all of the time. If we would ever need to go back to some sort of fee, it would be.
I agree with the point that a lot of parents think that it's just in high. I guess the question is, what are other schools doing? Coming down?
But I can tell you, most surrounding Montgomery County school districts do not even have the activity fee, or they have such a smaller fee associated with that. We have the numbers. We still have them today. But I can do that.
Have they eliminated?
So this particular policy, no, they probably have a policy about co-curricular activities as a base.
So
base
they would never have an activity
Correct.
policy.
Yeah. But again, some of them do have other avenues. They utilize this similar platform for technology fee or something like that that we deem not to be interested in.
How long did we have the activity fee for? How many years?
I will say probably about a good 10 years.
I'm sorry, I assume we were abnormal in the other, we were one of the only schools that had an activity fee.
I don't remember exactly the data around that. I just think it was one of those low hanging fruits as we characterize some of the decisions that were made at the time to try and offset the financial difficulties the district was experiencing. Honestly, I think if the board wants to reinstate an activity fee, they can take action and do it. I don't know that you even need it in a policy to do that. And you
Because
can change policy if you want to as a board. You know, you
Yeah.
have the authority to do that.
to Ms. Evans Brocket's point, the parents are correct. There is an activity fee. We just set it at 0. So it's technically, it's in hiatus because it's just at 0. Right? And that's-
You know, it's not gonna be.
I'm forgetting rid of it. I mean, not that- I never liked it. I'm more of the way I look at sports. I think that sports and activities all around chess, debate, are all different forms of intelligence, and we shouldn't be restricting anybody. For, you know, that for these things that are open or should be open to all opportunities for people to excel, you know, a well mens sano and corporate sano. So strong mind and strong body. And it's not just this activity. I don't know, other things were mentioned. I'm not calling out athletics, just that. But I remember vaguely other people having kids that I was hanging around for the football team and them griping about the activity fee like many years ago. I used to hang out with much older people generally. Yeah, I mean, not much older. But old.
Were you speaking Latin a couple of seconds ago?
Yeah.
Yes.
And they would, you know, talk about this activity fee, and I dreaded it. Honestly, I was younger and didn't even have kids yet. I was like 10, 12 years ago and something. And I remember talking about this activity fee being like, what is that? Can you believe that? And we talked about it, you know, just in passing, like, I don't believe that they have it. And I'm glad to see, I didn't even know it went away, actually. I just hadn't heard about it for a while. But I don't think we need the policy. And if, you
But
know,
we need a
certainly-
policy, you mean not the section.
Not the section.
Yeah.
I don't think we need the section on activity fees.
Okay.
And, if everybody, you know, other school districts around us aren't doing it, I think that's the right thing to do. I'm glad to see other people are agree with not doing it.
Any other questions on 122? Or comments? What they say in Cinderella, off she goes.
Thank you.
718, animals in schools, service animals in schools.
Yes, we have been talking about this policy
Off
for
with the
quite
head,
some time. And last month, the questions that surfaced were really around certification of training, as well as what we can require in terms of immunizations and vaccinations. So we had the solicitor take a look at it because those two areas really are more from that legal lens. And after review, they came back with some slightly different language in terms of what we would maybe strike from the policy. You can see on page 2. We had originally had information in there around if there was a request, it would come forward to the IUP team or the 504 to, and then we added if applicable. So that whole sentence there was really just struck from the policy because if there's a request, it would be brought forward to the building administrator for review. Then as you look down further, what was recommended is that we can in fact ask for a current dog license, and then we can ask for approval of vaccinations that are required by law. Right now, that law is really around rabies, but instead of just calling out rabies, this way it's applicable to whatever is then required by law. So it gives us that flexibility should the law change. We're not bound to just one specific. Further, again, it was then just striking, this is the annual submission, we're not allowed to ask for that. And we also are not allowed by law to ask for training certification. I guess that we are by ABA allowed to ask 2 questions. That is, whether the dog is required because of a disability and what tasks the dog is trained to do. Those are the allowable questions. So that was the clarification. I would recommend, based on the information here, that this policy. Or a miniature horse.
On the last page. One has been struck there. I don't understand why. And the case of threat, we would think we would-
Because the service animal is in response to the person with disability. And it's not, so if you have an allergy or say a fear of the animal, that's not a reason for us to prohibit the animal to be in the room. If I am a person with disability and in need of it, that needs to be accommodated. So we would need to address that, but that would not make things into service animal.
Where's a dog bite covered in?
That
I
plays
think that's a
into-
logical extension of that question.
Yeah, there is a.
So kids can't be responsible, so
The
the
owner.
owner of the dog, the parent, or somebody else. They have to sign something.
We'd have to indemnify the school and everyone around. Yeah. Can we break this down to the actual simplistic term? I know you and I were talking about this after the wellness meeting. The student needs a service dog. The student's not necessarily, it's not their service dog. They could be an outside source, correct? For the service dog. They could have a company where they have the service dog. So
I would presume so.
Yeah. So the handler is going to be on the premises at the same time, correct?
Yes, and that handler could be another individual handling the dog, or it could be the student.
Would that handler go through the same type of background checks as, when you go to coach a team, you have to go through a background check. Will that handler go through the same type of background checks, security checks? That,
Yes.
That's in our policies.
Yeah.
Yes, contractors, individuals in our schools on a regular basis with kids must go through, must have the clearances, yes.
okay. So wouldn't and I might have missed it, but shouldn't that? This policy is talking about an animal, which I understand, but shouldn't the policy reference somewhere policy 117 that says that the adult that's with the animal has to go through a lot of checks and balances to get into the building as well? Mr. Sansamarsh, I got it. I got your brain. Do you understand what I'm trying to figure out?
I do, and I think it's, if the handler is not a enrolled student. So if it is an adult that is not employed by the district other than has access to the dog that they see.
Yeah.
Yes, I just imagine that unless they're a enrolled student, they would not need that check. If they're minor and they're enrolled, they would not need that. They need to meet the requirements to be enrolled, but
Yep.
Do I understand that right, that, that scenario? the child needs a service dog, in sixth grade, service dog, so that handler would be, taking that handler, and that dog would be sitting in the class. That's a scenario.
and correct if I'm wrong, because you did the legwork on this, and I don't want to speak inappropriately. For Ms. Dr. Gould, sorry, is I'll put a rough percentage on it. 90% of these are not going to be that scenario. It's going to be the student knows the dog that can be helped. You're going to see neither. Whatever. It's going to not be a third person in most cases.
That's what I would like to see.
Yeah.
And again, there's not many, when we were looking at this, this. Some districts have policies, some districts don't have policy, but there's I don't think we have any districts that currently have a service animal on the premise. However, we have had inquiries over the years about this, so in preparation, for should that situation present itself, it was in our best interest to either develop a policy that would address all of those facets. And through that, these are the things that we're learning, what we can or can't guess. But that the animal needs to be trained. I love to ask if they're trained. We have to ask what task it is that they are to do.
So the animal doesn't have to be trained.
I'd like to get back to.
Just real quick, could you just speak up? We don't have microphones today, just, yeah.
You struck out point one, and you've given an example of point one states the direct threat to the safety of the. And you're saying the district administrator, which I'm assuming is the local of our schools, can make that decision. If in fact, and I love dogs, but if something is a direct threat, it should absolutely have the ability to remove the animal from the premise.
Absolutely. In my experience at Skip Back, we had a dog in our reading program one time, simply never bit anybody, never even got arrested, just was being pet one day. Oh, that dog was wrong.
And I hear exactly what you're saying, Mr. Clark. If you go back up, page 2, what's in there as well. If an animal is properly removed from or prohibited on district property, the district will continue to give individual disability opportunities. Your point that but it doesn't clearly articulate why it would need to be.
Right, but you're saying that the district administrator is making that decision. So obviously, you're saying somebody with authority is looking at something, and if they see a direct threat to something, my gosh, have to write.
I think they're two different things. The top piece says that if the animal is removed, we haven't gotten to how that animal is removed, then the district will continue to give the individual who needed the animal the opportunity to participate in district services. That's different with who has the authority to remove the animal.
I wonder if the committee would be okay if we did talk to our solicitor a little bit more about this. There is some logic to what you're saying, and we would want a building principal to recognize a threat and be able to act on it in the event there was one. So I wonder if we could just push on that a little bit and get some more clarification. Yeah. And it may be that the committee would like to leave it in here,
Yeah.
presuming we're not violating any law. I mean, there's logic to what's being pointed out here, so.
I don't think anyone's against, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think the reasoning hinges on, is it a reasonable accommodation? Remember that, right? So if the dog appears to not be something that's safe, that poses a threat to other people, not that you even have to have it written in there. I don't think there's a problem having it written in there, but then it would not be a reasonable accommodation to allow somebody to bring
Right.
something that's going to harm other students
Agreed.
into the classroom. I mean, we've heard that before, but no, that I think the reasonable accommodation is where you go to. We just sort of skipped over it. It's not written here. It's not written here. We're just talking about when you approach somebody, it is a little thin that you don't have to get a certification. There's no certification. There's no universal school that these dogs have to go to. The person just has to say, oh, they're trained to open a door, lead them, stop it, walkways, things like that. Anyway, but there are only limited questions that you can ask. So that I think that's what we're getting at, in trying to incorporate the appropriate questions to ask someone so that we don't ask inappropriate questions, but that the other things, if the mini horse is really quite big, maybe,
What's the definition of mini?
right, maybe it's not a reasonable accommodation. Okay,
I know you don't want to clean up off a mini. I have
I
another,
know it's the fun.
I have a comical,
Sorry.
I have a comical but serious question. Like I am definitely allergic. I have a really bad allergy to cats, not to dogs luckily, but I'm allergic to dogs. If I was in a room with a dog that wasn't like a golden doodle like I had that's hyperallergenic, couldn't stay in that room. I couldn't even be in the room after the dog left the room.
I don't think it counts if it's not peanuts.
Well, that's what I was getting at.
It counts. And I think we would also have to consider reasonable accommodations for you in that case. And we would separate you. We would keep you out of that class, put you in another class.
I just think there's a lot to think about when we have, I don't want to have a policy that's not accurate. We just got a lot to think about before I don't think anyone disagrees that having service dogs in the school nobody thinks that it's bad. We just have to make sure the policy looks at everything before we institute it.
We don't want to limit it, but we don't want to limit us.
Any other questions on 700? Oops, 718?
I just wanted.
Yeah.
to make sure the requirement that we do not, train, not be able to ask the cats, the animals perform. If it's been trained.
That's by law.
And that's by law.
Yeah.
ADA. And again, that's why we took this to facility for review, because it's getting into just some finer points that just, I think, cause us to pause and ask why.
Yeah.
So, again, we want to get some clarification. And put things in, like the last point.
Yeah, then it is prudent then to have a solicitor provide additional guidance.
Mhm.
Because in this case, there's so many things that the lawsuit can add to the provisions here. And therefore, maybe the policy can work around in ways that really protects the district and protects the students. So that it can be very proactive in removal for certain reasons, right? As opposed to after tragedy. I think everyone agrees for sure that if the right circumstances, we want to accommodate. But if it's so open-ended and so nebulous that we can't have the students, that would be that. So I would get more guidance.
Any other questions on that one? No. And could we don't want a miniature horse in the school because cleaning up is there a way to just strike that part out, or is that not allowed?
You can do what you want. Yes, you can do that.
I don't, I wouldn't want to see.
As a
miniature
committee, you
horse.
can certainly recommend that.
Anyone else have questions about that?
Well, if
Like-
you want to exclude miniature horses, you have to, does the policy actually say that it must be a dog? Or are you also excluding that?
Well, it says that service animals means a dog that's trained to work or a miniature horse. So I would personally just get rid of the miniature
Dog
horse.
trained or maybe a miniature horse. Does the law allow us to strike the miniature horse outside?
To be selective like that, we can ask our solicitor that.
I don't know. So I could be elected as a person not know. How to utilize.
Well, you made a comment based on no empirical data, where you don't know that a miniature horse does bathroom stuff more than a regular dog. Right?
Right.
That's an assumption.
Well, I know horses are
But
I'm
these are
just saying.
miniature horses.
still a horse, my friend. But we could find out.
Maybe they can be potty trained.
Horses usually have a clamp connected to them, and it's just different than a
I
dog.
mean, to the point though, don't just exclude them if we don't have any data that says they're different. than them.
The legal citation has a lot of things there. And it does say assessing the miniature horse. You determine whether or not, and this is, I think, what we're talking around, the type, size, and weight of the miniature horse, and whether the facility can accommodate the features of that horse. We have no barn, so whether the handler has sufficient control
Yeah.
of the miniature horse,
Horses don't do steps really well either.
that could go south fast. And I think the custodians might have an opinion, just my
There
thought.
could be cheating too. Some of them
Whether the
could
miniature
count,
horse is
right?
housebroken, you can consider that, whether the miniature horse has housebroken, and whether the miniature horse's presence in a specific facility compromises legitimate safety requires that are necessary for safe operation. You've got a couple things there to consider when, I think, and I don't want to speak for the group, I think the goal here is dogs.
Yes.
So I don't want to lose sight of the goal.
I concur, but I think Ms. Becky Brock has a great point. So much more. Someone that said that we can't, you know, consider a miniature horse because it's functionally the same as a dog and behaves the same as a dog, et cetera, then why would you exclude it?
Well, next time you come to my house, I'll show you a miniature horse.
But I know that classroom, and I was a joke, though, that classroom would be the most popular.
Yep. Yep.
Aren't these federally protected?
I don't know that, I mean, they're connected to ADA. I mean, that's another question we could ask as
I
we
think that's
probe a
probably
little
the
bit
biggest
more.
one, is that there's an accommodation that the federal government has decided that
Is reasonable.
I just don't understand how we can wordsmith language over something that I just don't think it's for us to say. It's for the by somebody else.
No, a comment, well,
Well,
you're right, we have to follow the law.
Unless the law provides.
Well, we'll ask Mr. Subers
Mhm.
what he thinks about.
Yeah.
Accommodations are not,
Different than therapy dog.
Yeah, and we're not talking about therapy dogs.
I
right?
understand, but I guess that was my point.
Let's show him what that-
Just looking
Aw,
at the citation.
Look at that doodle.
So we'll get some more information for the committee and bring it back in January.
You guys want to do therapy dogs?
Changes, I think, on the service animal, it's actually a subsection of that. And this came up because there's a difference between a service animal versus a therapy dog. So this policy has some slight recommendations. And again, just to clarify, what it is not a service animal. And references policy 72. So we'll make this one. Get 17 to where you- And then with the therapy dog, there is one that you can acquire because they're not. all of them are based on certification, trade, and it's a little bit tighter, I'd say, and it allows us more flexibility. We talked to them briefly, and when we looked at policy, there's a lot of their policy for housing.
Yeah.
Process. So what we wanted to get was
She might. She wasn't sure.
Yes or no?
to find out more what we can get, what we can do, and then a lot of what was in for sinus policy, I really wish we could add things that we could, there's more specifics. This is our step by step, what we would do.
Just from my education, a therapy dog.
No, it's not a legal, no, it would be, the service animal would be the legal requirement for a disability. Therapy dog is, again, oftentimes what we're finding in the audience here. What we're finding is that school districts that do have therapy dogs are getting more from that social.
think so.
that your assessment at this point that, you know, that there are demonstrable benefits to have.
This is just what we see. Yes.
To give some context there too, and I don't want to repeat things that were repeated last month, as I know it was discussed. Ava Balloon is our student here.
Mhm.
She actually has done a lot of the steady legwork along with Carmen Zelinsky, and they visited Emmaus, who actually, I still think doesn't even have a policy with this, but they have it in. They have therapy dogs in, and they have a system in place. So she's done a lot of legwork and looked at some other districts to find that out. I think it's it's really your steadfastness in this. I was going to make a joke like this started when you were a sophomore and when you were senior year, but the steadfastness that you've shown to give you that context. This has been well researched. It's trying to get the language right to match off the other one. It is absolutely something that I can tell you at the building level. We're excited to anticipate this passage, ultimately when we get it right, because I can tell you it'll impact positively a number of kids in Flashpoint 1 and 2.
David, do you want to come up and talk?
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, but now I'm in trouble tomorrow.
And last year, there were questions coming up around service animals. It was working with other therapy dogs that we really felt that we needed to clarify each of those elements.
You want to add anything to the discussion? I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I mean, just, generally speaking, and your research found that there's our other schools.
Sure. I remember when this one here visited Emmaus, we walked around to the tour with and their therapy dog, his name is Brand. She's a golden retriever. And students would pass by them in the hallways, and there was one girl, and she was not, and wasn't having a great day. She was all on the face, just like, oh my God, Brand, hi. And she was like petting him. Several students came by, and like they just petted him, and could tell the way that their day kind of flipped around. And I also talked with administrators from Woodward, where they also have therapy dogs, and the woman that we're talking to about training with a therapy dog for PD, she worked with Warwick first, so that's her biggest project, and they've also seen a lot of benefits as far as the way that their students are interacting with their peers more because of the as a result of that.
Just for fair balance, so our they were able to talk about challenges or issues that they experience.
So I think that one of the things that they talked about was at Emmaus, they had too many. They talked about the issue of having too many handlers. So one of the important things is having a dog was consistency. So, should always shaking his head a lot. But if the dog is like spread out over 10 people throughout the day, then nobody's putting it together that just keeps you. The dog has an infection that has been developing, whereas if you were with fewer people, they might have picked up on it faster. So that's one of the things that I talked about was sort of narrowing it down to who the dog is spending its time with. And then also making sure that the dog was with counselors or parents, just not teachers, because teachers are mostly not confined, but if they stay in their classroom, they're not. Only a certain group of students have access to the dog, and I think it makes things difficult. Teacher can't move the dog around, out, and you don't do that. It also makes things a little bit more difficult for students who need to use the dog.
That's their small exceptional work.
Thank you so much.
have to move forward with the service dog policy in order to move forward with the therapy dog policy?
That would
It
be
seems
my, that would be my question.
I
and
think
I'm
so
only-
too.
only Because I'm looking up here, it says to see policy 718, service animals in school. So because it's left, that would be my question. Is that something? Right? This, is it okay to have 7.1 without 718?
It could just be adopted as 718 and then expanded when service animals gets under that.
Yeah,
I like that idea.
yeah, we could talk to our solicitor about that too, but I think I appreciate the idea, the suggestion, yeah. How about you, Dr. Boyd? Are you okay with that?
You sure?
So that would mean maybe another month on this one to wait to hear from that.
No, not necessarily.
So I'm wondering, I'm reading the sentence, therapy dogs are not service animals. Providing accommodations under the Americans with Disabilities Act, we could end the sentence there and propose to the committee then that it goes to first reading.
Wouldn't this policy be really more with more frequent norm than the other?
Yes, it
So
would.
I guess, I just feel like the benefits of this, I think, are more of a local reach than
Mhm.
specific accommodation for ADA.
It will touch more students on a
And
regular
so-
basis.
So Mr. Marshall had mentioned earlier about like the dogs that are already in some of our elementary schools. Would they fall under this as well?
I'm sorry.
I don't know that that is still happening. I don't know if it is.
I don't
or
know
not,
either,
because
but
we
I'm just saying
discontinued
in
it.
instances of that.
Yeah.
I know that, Ava, when you talked last time, that you were here, thank you for coming. To see this through, all the way. You were talking about actually having, like, the district owning a dog for a lot of different positive reasons, as opposed to just having dogs come back and come in randomly, which I think is what was previously happening as like a training sort of.
It was a reading program
Right.
that they were bringing in, and the only reason it ended was because all those dogs passed.
Right,
So,
right.
Yeah.
They're cyclical, right.
yeah.
But I think that that had great benefits too, because kids were happy to have them there and they practice reading and blah, blah, blah. But I think that I'm just curious if a program like that would fall under this policy, or was that really just at the discretion of the policy?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is, I think, fine, because I think, but it's certainly something we can look into. I would anticipate that they have their folks come in. They do have to have somebody who is with them.
Oh, right.
At all
Big
times.
responsibility.
I would anticipate that we could take a look at this. My guess would be check it out. If it hasn't been
Right.
policy,
Right.
if it goes into effect, then I would say that would be what we look to for our
Yes.
guidance
I would agree.
with any type of therapy dog. But even is a little bit different.
Yeah, right.
But this policy could govern all of that.
That's my question. And then I guess my follow-up to that would be with regards to this policy passing, is there a timeline to, like, with action steps to actually put it in place?
Yeah. Dr. George shared with us that number we started working on. First step would be fundraising. We've already lined up the other districts that we consult with. The person that we hire is and she's worked with a lot of districts, so that one experience. So, yeah, we're working on that.
Great. And is it expected that they bring a whole plan for approval in terms of cost, or what's the expectation?
Are you talking about the school district purchasing their own dogs?
That was part of the presentation.
No, I understand.
So I guess my question is, if we have this policy, the idea in my mind would be to take an action, to move it forward, so it actually can come to fruition. And so I'm just curious as to what the timeline would be, or would be possible. I'm a proponent of it, so I just feel like
Well-
it's silly to have a policy and not use it, right? So,
Yeah, I just want to, so the policy is one thing that allows the school district to have therapy dogs for X, Y, and Z. The second process would be to actually have a process where the school district purchases dogs and owns dogs. I think they're two separate things. I think,
well, in her mind, they're not.
no, I completely understand that,
So
yeah.
I just feel like if we're trying to see, go ahead, Mr. Mark.
No, I would propose this, and I'm speaking just for myself, and I haven't consulted or even made eye contact on this. But I would think this, the details of what would ultimately be an administrative reg off of this, in my mind, would come as we consult, but we need the clearance of the policy passing. So therefore, we could begin to consult with Wendy, and I'm suggesting maybe through this committee, or if you wanted at the board of the whole, and since I'm saying this, I would offer to do it, but that we would give you an update a
Yeah.
couple months in. This is what we're learning. Within the policy, this is what, we can give you a solid timeline. We need the space cleared first to actually consult with her
Right.
formally.
Yeah, so the way I look at it, I don't look at one having anything to do with the other. This is a policy that allows service dogs in the school district, which would then allow, to expand that process, because it's allowing service dogs, a whole nother animal, and a whole nother talking point would be, does the school district purchase a dog? And then what happens with said dog 365?
Right, so that's a critical question. So
Yeah.
we would start, like, we would answer that. for you. So
Yeah.
This is what we see for this, here's where the monies are.
Yeah.
And here's what we've learned, but we've gotten so far with that, but we don't have every detail.
Yeah.
And not to target anybody, but could a dog be a tool for special needs students?
Yeah.
Dog walking, dog cleaning, dog grooming, I don't know. There's plenty of work to be done.
So as we think about transitioning some of our intellectually disabled students
Yeah.
I was more talking
to
about-
sustainable employment,
Yeah.
is caring for therapy dogs, if we were to, I was going to suggest subscribe with a third-party vendor. Maybe we don't purchase our own dogs, maybe we do it eventually down the road. But even if they were here on site, could some of our students help care for them in some way? Because we're looking for opportunities to develop our students and prepare them for that transition to sustainable employment, excuse me. Another opportunity.
Yeah.
Great.
You suggested earlier at some point, basically, we strengthen the words, policy, 718. If we were to strike those words, perhaps renumber this from 17.1 to say 719, so it's on standalone policy. That's this tonight and allow us to start rolling.
I think that's the goal is to move this forward to first reading in December by removing that, Mr. Clellens mentioned, making it just 718 and dealing with,
And then maybe move service animals to 718.1 or 719. I'm not sure if there's a 719 without looking into our active policies, but okay.
You see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
Renumber that,
yes.
And now we can get this good work moving rather than arguing about a couple of phrases up here.
Yeah.
You're basically saying, we have a good framework for the therapy. Framework for the service dog is still.
716.
Okay, good. Okay.
You don't even have a 717.
Oh, we could do that.
Yeah.
Okay. So if the committee's okay, we'll strike that one portion of the sentence and then move the policy to first reading.
Yep.
As 718.
Anyone object to that?
Excellent. Great.
That is the local policy review. Any comments from the audience? No comments from the audience?
Thank you.
Just wanted to
Thanks for your work.
recognize Mr. Jay Kellen, Mr. Russ Washington, Mr. Bob Leggett, new committee members to the policy committee. Thank you guys for joining us tonight. We look forward to your active participation in the weeks and days and months ahead. 5.0, 5.02, the minutes will be attached. Just want to make note that 5.04, since this meeting is being recorded. Now, just to make sure we're all on the same page, it's not YouTube live where it'll be available immediately, but sometime the next day or two, it'll be placed on, correct?
It is YouTube Live.
Oh, it is YouTube.
We are
You
live
figured that out?
streaming. Yes,
Live
we
streaming,
did.
okay. So just making mention of 5.04, 5.03, going back to that are the upcoming meeting dates. I will request, if possible, that the Tuesday, January 17th meeting in 23 be moved up a week or to the 21 week later if possible. And then without objections, if there are none, adjournment.
Thank you.
Don't know.